The private jet sliced through the clouds as Gabriel York stared out the window, the skyline of his childhood hometown slowly materializing below. After 15 years of building his hospitality empire in New York, the CEO of York International Hotels was finally returning to Meadow Springs. The small town hadn't changed much from what he could see: the same rolling hills, the same winding river, and somewhere down there, memories he'd left behind. "We'll be landing in 10 minutes, Mr. York," his pilot announced over the intercom. Gabriel nodded, straightening his tailored suit. At 38, he had achieved everything he'd set out to do when he left town as an ambitious 23-year-old with nothing but determination and a business degree. His hotel chain now spanned 4 continents, his net worth had crossed into billionaire territory last year, and his face had graced the cover of Forbes twice. Yet something felt incomplete. The real estate developer who had invited him back to consider investing in a luxury resort project had been persistent. "Your hometown needs you, Mr. York," she'd said, "and perhaps you need it too." Gabriel had scoffed at the sentiment but agreed to the meeting nonetheless. As the jet touched down on the small regional airfield, Gabriel felt an unexpected flutter in his stomach. He wasn't just returning as a successful businessman, he was returning to the place where his dreams were born, where his heart had once belonged. The chauffeur waited with a sign bearing his name. Gabriel smiled politely as the man took his luggage. "Welcome back to Meadow Springs, Mr. York. The Grand Inn has prepared their finest suite for your stay." "Thank you," Gabriel replied, sliding into the backseat of the luxury sedan. "Before we head to the hotel, I'd like to take a drive through town." The driver nodded, and soon they were cruising down Main Street. Gabriel's eyes widened as he took in the changes. Some storefronts had been renovated, others replaced entirely. The old cinema was now a bookstore. The diner where he'd spent countless afternoons looked the same, though with a fresh coat of paint. They drove past Meadow Springs High School, and Gabriel felt a pang of nostalgia. Images flashed through his mind: football games, prom night, and most vividly, a girl with honey blonde hair and a laugh that could light up a room. Gwendolyn O'Connor. His best friend, his first love, the girl he'd never quite gotten over. "Stop the car," Gabriel said suddenly. The driver pulled over and Gabriel stepped out, standing before the wrought iron gates of the school. 15 years had passed since graduation day, since he and Gwen had promised to keep in touch despite heading to different colleges. They had for a while. Then life happened. His career took off, her messages became less frequent, and eventually they lost touch completely. The last he'd heard, she was engaged to some doctor in Chicago. That was 10 years ago, through the grapevine of social media and mutual friends. He never checked to see if they'd married. It hurt too much. Gabriel climbed back into the car, instructing the driver to continue to the hotel. He needed to focus on business, not ghosts from his past. The Grand Inn was the finest establishment in Meadow Springs, though it paled in comparison to the luxury properties in his portfolio. Still, there was a charm to its brick facade and carefully tended gardens. As he approached the entrance, Gabriel noticed a woman exiting, her arms full of flowers. She was talking animatedly to the doorman, her back to Gabriel. "I've told Monica 1,000 times that we need more vibrant colors for the spring festival," she was saying, her voice achingly familiar. "These pale pink roses are lovely, but they won't." She turned, and the world seemed to stop. The flowers tumbled from her arms as her green eyes met his. "Gabriel," she whispered. "Gwen," he replied, his voice catching in his throat. Gwendolyn O'Connor stood before him, as beautiful as the day he'd left. Her honey blonde hair was shorter now, cut in an elegant bob that framed her face perfectly. She wore a simple blue dress that hugged her curves, and a small silver pendant hung around her neck, the one he'd given her for her 18th birthday. "What are you doing here?" she asked, bending down to gather the fallen flowers. Gabriel kneeled to help her. "Business meeting. A potential resort development." Their hands touched as they reached for the same rose, and he felt an electric jolt that took him right back to high school. "What about you?" "I thought you were in Chicago," she laughed, that same melodious sound he remembered. "That was a lifetime ago. I've been back in Meadow Springs for 6 years now. I own Bloom and Petal, the florist shop on Maple Street. We also handle event planning for most major functions in town." Gabriel stood, handing her the collected flowers. "So you're working on something here at the hotel, the Spring Heritage Festival. It's next weekend." She adjusted the bouquet in her arms. "You should come. It's quite the event now, the whole town turns out." Gabriel nodded, conscious of the chauffeur and doorman watching their interaction with interest. "I'd like that." He paused, gathering courage. Is your husband coming too?" Gwendolyn's expression flickered with something he couldn't read. "There is no husband, Gabe, there never was." Before he could process this information, the hotel manager approached, effusive in his welcome. By the time Gabriel turned back, Gwen was walking toward her van, flowers safely restored to her arms. "Gwen," he called after her. She turned, the afternoon sun highlighting the golden strands in her hair. "The festival starts at 4 next Saturday. Don't be late this time." She smiled, referencing the senior prom when he'd arrived an hour late due to a flat tire. Gabriel watched her drive away, his heart hammering in his chest. She wasn't married. She wasn't even engaged anymore. She was here in Meadow Springs, single and as captivating as ever. His phone buzzed with messages from his executive team in New York. But for once, Gabriel York found himself utterly disinterested in business matters. The next morning, Gabriel woke early and decided to explore the town properly. He declined the chauffeur, preferring to walk the familiar streets alone. Meadow Springs was beginning to stir, shopkeepers unlocking doors, joggers circling the town square, the bakery already filling the air with the scent of fresh bread. His feet carried him automatically to Maple Street, and before he knew it, he was standing outside Bloom and Petal. The storefront was charming, with window boxes overflowing with colorful blooms and an elegant hand-painted sign. Through the glass, he could see Gwen arranging flowers, her movements precise and artistic. Taking a deep breath, Gabriel pushed open the door, setting off a small bell. Gwen looked up, surprise registering on her face before she smiled. 2 encounters in 24 hours. Meadow Springs must be smaller than I remember. Or maybe I'm exactly where I want to be, Gabriel replied, instantly regretting the forwardness of his comment. But Gwen only laughed, setting down her clippers. "Still smooth talking your way through life, I see. Not as much as you might think." He approached the counter, taking in the organized chaos of her workspace, ribbons, vases, and flowers in every imaginable color. "This place suits you. It's beautiful." "Thank you," she said, genuine pride in her voice. "It took 3 years of saving while working for Mrs. Holden at the old flower shop before I could buy it from her when she retired. Then another year to renovate and rebrand." Gabriel nodded, impressed. "You always did have an eye for beauty. Remember the prom decorations you designed? The principals said it was the most elegant theme they'd ever had." "Starry night," she reminisced. "You remembered." "I remember everything about us, Gwen." The atmosphere shifted, 15 years of unspoken feelings hanging between them. Gwen tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, a gesture he remembered from whenever she was nervous. "What happened with Chicago?" he asked gently. "Last I heard, you were engaged to a doctor." Gwen sighed, moving to the small sitting area in the corner of her shop where clients usually discussed arrangements. Gabriel followed, taking the seat opposite her. "James was a good man," she began. "We met during my final year at Northwestern. He was completing his residency at the hospital where I was interning in event planning. Everything seemed perfect on paper." She paused, but something was always missing. "I postponed the wedding twice before finally admitting to myself it wasn't going to work." "I'm sorry," Gabriel said, though he wasn't entirely sure he meant it. "Don't be. It was the right decision. When my dad got sick, I came back to help my mom care for him." After he passed, I realized how much I'd missed this place, the community, the pace of life. So I stayed, built this business. She gestured around her shop. What about you? The great Gabriel York, hotel magnate. Any Mrs. York waiting in New York? Gabriel shook his head. Never found the right fit. Came close once, about 5 years ago. Camille, she was the head of marketing for a luxury fashion brand. Smart, ambitious, beautiful. But in the end, she wanted the CEO, not the man behind the title. Gwen studied him, those green eyes seeing too much, just like they always had. And who is the man behind the title these days? Still the same Gabe who helped me rescue baby birds from the school courtyard and snuck into old Mr. Peterson's orchard to steal apples. Gabriel laughed, the tension easing. Maybe not quite so reckless, but still capable of breaking rules for the right cause. He glanced at his watch. Speaking of which, I'm supposed to be preparing for my meeting with the developers in an hour. Disappointment flickered across Gwen's face. Right, you're here on business. But I'd like to see you again, he said quickly. Properly catch up. Dinner tonight? Gwen hesitated, then nodded. Antonio's still makes the best pasta in 3 counties. Antonio's it is. 7 o'clock, I'll meet you there. She stood and walked him to the door. As he was about to leave, she touched his arm. It's good to see you, Gabe, really good. The warmth of her touch stayed with him all the way back to the hotel. The meeting with the developers took longer than expected. The proposed luxury resort would be built on the old Fairfield estate, a historic property that had fallen into disrepair after the last Fairfield heir passed away without children. The developers were enthusiastic about Gabriel's potential investment, emphasizing how the resort would bring jobs and tourism to Meadow Springs while preserving the historical significance of the estate. Gabriel listened attentively, asked pointed questions, and reviewed the business projections. It was a solid proposal, but something nagged at him. The Fairfield estate has quite the gardens, if I remember correctly, he said. What are your plans for those? The lead developer, a slick man named Parker, waved dismissively. We'll keep some elements for aesthetic purposes, but most will be converted to accommodate the golf course and spa facilities. Gabriel frowned. The Fairfield Gardens had been legendary in Meadow Springs, a botanical wonderland that Mrs. Fairfield had spent decades cultivating. He remembered sneaking onto the grounds with Gwen when they were teenagers, marveling at the rare flowers and ancient trees. I'll need time to consider the proposal, Gabriel said finally, and I'd like a tour of the property tomorrow. Parker agreed eagerly, and the meeting adjourned. Gabriel retreated to his suite to prepare for dinner, his mind divided between business considerations and the thought of seeing Gwen again. Antonio's was exactly as he remembered: warm lighting, checkered tablecloths, and the rich aroma of garlic and tomato sauce. The owner, Antonio himself, now with more gray than black in his mustache, recognized Gabriel immediately and insisted on giving him the best table in the house. Gabriel arrived early, ordering a bottle of Chianti that he remembered Gwen favoring in their college days when they'd both visit home for holidays. At precisely 7, she walked through the door, wearing a deep green dress that made her eyes sparkle. Her hair was loose now, soft waves framing her face, and she wore simple gold earrings that caught the light. Every head in the restaurant turned to look at her, but her eyes found only Gabriel. He stood as she approached, suddenly feeling like an awkward teenager again despite his tailored suit and the confidence that came from years of high-stakes business dealings. You look beautiful, he said as she sat down. Thank you. She smiled, accepting the glass of wine he poured for her. How was your meeting? Are you going to turn our sleepy town into a playground for the wealthy? Gabriel chuckled. I haven't decided yet. The proposal is interesting, but I have some concerns. He paused as Antonio himself delivered bread and antipasto to their table, fussing over them like long-lost children. Once they were alone again, Gwen leaned forward. What concerns? Besides the obvious fact that most locals won't be able to afford to stay there. The gardens, for one. The developers want to destroy most of the Fairfield estate gardens for a golf course. Gwen's eyes widened. They can't. Those gardens are practically a historical landmark. Mrs. Fairfield's rare orchid collection alone is irreplaceable. She shook her head passionately. That property should be preserved, not paved over. Gabriel watched her, captivated by her passion. This was the Gwen he remembered, fiercely protective of the things she loved. "I'm touring the property tomorrow," he said. "Why don't you come with me? Your expertise in flowers would be valuable, and perhaps we can find a compromise that preserves the gardens while still allowing for development." Gwen hesitated. "Won't your developers mind having a local florist tagging along?" "I'm the potential investor with the money they need," Gabriel replied with a confident smile. "They don't get to mind." Their conversation flowed effortlessly through dinner, years melting away as they shared stories of their lives since Meadow Springs. Gabriel described building his hotel empire from a single struggling property he'd purchased with a loan and sheer determination. Gwen talked about her time in Chicago, her father's illness, and how returning to Meadow Springs had unexpectedly healed something in her. "I never thought I'd stay," she admitted over dessert tiramisu they shared from the center of the table. "I was so determined to see the world, experience big city life. And now I can't imagine being anywhere else. My roots are here." She looked at him thoughtfully. "Do you ever miss it?" The simplicity of small-town life, Gabriel considered the question. Sometimes, New York is exciting, the energy, the opportunities, but it can be isolating too. Success comes with its own kind of loneliness. Gwen reached across the table, briefly touching his hand. "You always were meant for bigger things, Gabe. Even in high school, everyone knew you'd go far." "Not everyone," he said softly. "Your father was convinced I'd amount to nothing." Gwen winced. "Dad was overprotective and old-fashioned. He didn't understand your ambition." She sighed. "Before he died, he actually mentioned you, said he'd seen an article about your hotels and that maybe he'd been wrong about you." Gabriel was surprised by how much that admission meant to him. "I would have liked to hear that from him." "Me too," she said quietly. After dinner, they walked through town, the spring night mild and fragrant with blooming flowers. They passed their old high school, the movie theater where they'd had their first date, the park bench where they'd shared their first kiss. "You remember what you said to me that night?" Gwen asked as they paused by the bench. Gabriel nodded. "I said that no matter where life took us, a part of me would always belong to you." He met her gaze. "I meant it, Gwen." She looked away toward the town square where preparations for the Spring Heritage Festival were already underway. "A lot of years have passed, Gabe. We're different people now. Are we?" he challenged gently. "Or are we finally becoming who we were always meant to be?" Gwen didn't answer, but when they reached her small cottage at the edge of town, she invited him in for coffee. Her home was exactly what he would have expected: cozy, filled with plants and flowers, books stacked on every surface, and photographs documenting her life. He noticed several from their high school days displayed prominently on a bookshelf. As she prepared coffee in the kitchen, Gabriel examined the photos more closely. There they were at senior prom, his arm around her waist, both beaming at the camera. Another showed them at graduation, caps askew, futures bright and uncertain. "You kept these all these years," he observed when she returned with 2 mugs. "Of course I did." She handed him his coffee. "Those were some of the happiest times of my life." They talked until midnight, sitting on her comfortable couch, gradually moving closer until their shoulders touched. When Gabriel finally said he should go, neither of them moved immediately. "The property tour tomorrow," he said. "I'll pick you up at 10, Gwen nodded. "I'll be ready." At her door, Gabriel hesitated, then leaned down and kissed her cheek, lingering just long enough to catch the scent of her perfume lilacs, her favorite since high school. "Good night, Gwendolyn O'Connor," he whispered. "Good night, Gabriel York," she replied, her voice just as soft. The next morning dawned clear and bright. Gabriel collected Gwen in a car he'd rented for the occasion, wanting privacy that the chauffeur-driven sedan wouldn't provide. She was dressed practically in jeans and a light sweater, her hair pulled back, looking more like the girl he'd explored the woods with than the sophisticated businesswoman of yesterday. Parker and his team were already at the Fairfield estate when they arrived, visibly surprised by Gwen's presence. Gabriel introduced her as a local business owner and expert on the estate's botanical features, whose input he valued. Parker's smile was strained but professional. The main house was impressive even in its neglected state, a grand Victorian mansion with intricate woodwork and soaring ceilings. The developers outlined plans to restore it as the centerpiece of the resort, with luxury suites and a fine dining restaurant. But it was the gardens that truly took Gabriel's breath away. Despite years of minimal maintenance, the bones of Mrs. Fairfield's vision remained stone pathways winding through rare specimen trees, formal rose gardens now slightly overgrown but still magnificent, and the famous glass orchid house, miraculously intact. Gwen moved through the space with reverence, identifying plants and explaining their significance to Gabriel and the developers. Her knowledge was impressive, her passion palpable. The microclimate in this valley is unique, she explained as they stood in the orchid house. Mrs. Fairfield spent decades cultivating species that shouldn't be able to grow in our region. Some of these orchids are extinct in their native habitats now. To destroy this collection would be an ecological tragedy. Gabriel watched her, seeing not just the woman he'd once loved, but a respected expert in her field, someone who had built a life of substance and meaning. While he'd been accumulating wealth and accolades, she had been nurturing beauty and preserving history. When they reached the area designated for the golf course, a gently sloping meadow bordered by ancient oak trees, Gabriel made a decision. "Parker," he said firmly, "I'm interested in investing in this project, but with significant modifications." The developer's eyebrows rose. "What kind of modifications, Mr. York?" "The gardens stay, all of them. We integrate the resort into the existing landscape rather than reshaping the land to fit our needs." Gabriel gestured around them. "This isn't just a piece of real estate. It's a living museum, a part of this town's heritage." Parker began to protest, citing cost increases and design complications, but Gabriel held up a hand. "Additionally, I want the gardens open to the public. Local residents should have access to certain areas without having to be hotel guests." Gwen stared at him, surprise and gratitude mingling in her expression. "Mr. York," Parker said stiffly, "these changes would significantly impact our profit projections. Then we'll adjust the business model." Gabriel's tone left no room for argument. "Perhaps a botanical garden membership program, educational tours, a flower shop featuring rare specimens propagated here." He glanced at Gwen. "I imagine the local expert could consult on such endeavors." Understanding dawned in Parker's eyes as he looked between Gabriel and Gwen. "I see. Well, we can certainly explore these adjustments. Shall we return to the hotel to discuss details?" "You go ahead," Gabriel replied. "Miss O'Connor and I would like to explore the gardens a bit more. I'll meet you this afternoon." Once the developers had departed, Gwen turned to Gabriel, eyes shining. "Did you just revise a multi-million-dollar development plan to save some flowers?" Gabriel laughed. "Not just any flowers. Mrs. Fairfield's flowers, the ones we used to admire when we snuck in here as teenagers." He took her hand. "Besides, it makes good business sense. Uniqueness adds value. A luxury resort with historic gardens offers something competitors can't replicate." They walked through the grounds, memories surfacing with each familiar vista. They found the stone bench where they'd shared a stolen bottle of wine on prom night, the hidden grove where they'd carved their initials into a tree trunk. "It's still here," Gwen said softly, tracing the faded G+G with her fingertips. "After all these years." Gabriel stood behind her close enough to feel her warmth. "Some things are meant to last." She turned to face him, their bodies inches apart. "Why did you really come back to Meadow Springs, Gabe? Was it just business?" "I told myself it was," he admitted. But I think a part of me was always looking for a reason to return. He brushed a strand of hair from her face. To find what I left behind. And what was that? Her voice was barely a whisper. The only woman I've ever truly loved. The confession hung in the air between them, 15 years in the making. Gwen's eyes filled with tears. You broke my heart when you left, she said. I understood why your dreams were bigger than this town, but it hurt all the same. I know, Gabriel said. I broke my own heart too. Success meant nothing without someone to share it with. All these years, I've been chasing something I already had and lost. Gwen stepped closer. And now I'm wondering if it's too late for us, he said honestly, if too much time has passed, too many changes. Instead of answering, Gwen reached up and pulled him down to her, pressing her lips to his. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, then deepened with 15 years of longing. Gabriel's arms encircled her waist, holding her as if he might never let go again. When they finally parted, both breathless, Gwen smiled up at him. It's not too late, it's exactly the right time. The next week passed in a whirlwind. Gabriel extended his stay in Meadow Springs, working remotely when necessary but spending most of his time with Gwen. They revisited old haunts, created new memories, and talked for hours about their lives, dreams, and the future. The development deal for the Fairfield estate was restructured with Gabriel taking a controlling interest to ensure his vision for preserving the gardens would be realized. He even proposed creating a foundation to maintain the botanical collection in perpetuity, with Gwen as its director. On the day of the Spring Heritage Festival, Gabriel stood in the town square, watching Gwen direct her staff as they put the finishing touches on elaborate floral arrangements that transformed the space into an enchanted garden. She moved with confidence and grace, respected by everyone who worked with her. When everything was perfect, she joined him, slipping her hand into his. What do you think, will it do? It's spectacular, he said honestly. You're spectacular. The festival was a testament to small-town America at its finest. Families gathered, children played, local vendors showcased their wares, and neighbors caught up on gossip. Gabriel, who had grown accustomed to exclusive galas and corporate events, found himself charmed by the simplicity and genuine warmth. Everyone knew Gwen, of course, and everyone was curious about the famous hometown boy who had returned. Gabriel found himself answering countless questions about his hotels, his life in New York, and most pointedly, his relationship with Meadow Springs' beloved florist. As the sun began to set, string lights illuminated the square, and a local band started playing. Gabriel pulled Gwen to the makeshift dance floor, holding her close as they swayed to a slow melody. I've been thinking, he said against her hair, about us, about the future. Gwen looked up at him, her face glowing in the soft light. That sounds serious. It is. He took a deep breath. I don't want to leave you again, Gwen, but my company is based in New York. My life is there. Her expression faltered slightly. I understand, we can try long distance. Flights aren't that long, and no, he interrupted gently. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying I need to figure out a way to be where you are. Gwen's eyes widened. You would do that, leave New York. For you, yes, Gabriel smiled. Besides, I've been considering opening a corporate retreat center somewhere quiet, somewhere with natural beauty. Somewhere I could base myself at least part of the year. And the rest of the year, I have an excellent executive team. Video conferencing exists for a reason, and York International could benefit from having its CEO experience a better work-life balance. He twirled her gently. What do you think? Could you tolerate having me around more permanently? Gwen pretended to consider this seriously. Well, you are rather high maintenance. All those designer suits to dry clean, that sophisticated palette to satisfy. Gabriel laughed, pulling her closer. I'll have you know I still remember how to make boxed macaroni and cheese, and I own at least 3 T-shirts. In that case, she said, eyes twinkling, I suppose I could make room in my life for you. As the music swelled, Gabriel dipped her dramatically, causing her to laugh with delight. When he pulled her up, he kept her close, their foreheads touching. "I love you, Gwendolyn O'Connor," he said softly. "I never stopped." "And I love you, Gabriel York," she replied. "Welcome home." 1 year later, the Fairfield Estate Gardens Resort opened to considerable fanfare. The historic mansion had been impeccably restored, luxury accommodations seamlessly integrated with the natural landscape. But the true highlight was the gardens now more magnificent than ever under the direction of the Fairfield Botanical Foundation, headed by Gwen York. Gabriel and Gwen had married in those very gardens 6 months earlier, a simple ceremony attended by close friends and family. They divided their time between a renovated cottage in Meadow Springs and an apartment in New York, though Gabriel found himself spending increasingly more time in his hometown. York International continued to thrive, perhaps even more so with its CEO finding a healthier balance between ambition and personal happiness. Gabriel had opened a satellite office in Meadow Springs, creating jobs and investing in the community that had shaped him. As for Bloom and Petal, it had expanded to include a second location at the resort, showcasing flowers grown in the Fairfield greenhouses. Gwen's reputation as a botanical expert had spread beyond Meadow Springs, bringing visitors from across the country to admire her work. On the first anniversary of his return to Meadow Springs, Gabriel stood in their garden at sunset, watching Gwen tend to her prized roses. A simple gold band gleamed on her finger as she worked, matching the one on his own hand. "You ever regret it?" he asked, handing her a glass of wine as she finished. "Choosing small-town life over all the places you could have gone," Gwen considered the question, taking a sip before answering. "Not for a second. Some people spend their whole lives searching for something that feels like home." She smiled up at him. "I was lucky enough to find it twice, once in this town and once in you." Gabriel pulled her into his arms, marveling at how perfectly she still fit against him after all these years. Who would have thought that the CEO and the florist would end up being the perfect match? "I did," Gwen said confidently. "Even back in high school, I knew we were meant to find our way back to each other someday." As the stars appeared in the twilight sky above Meadow Springs, Gabriel York knew he had finally found success that mattered not in the hotels that bore his name around the world, but in the love he had recovered, the community he had rejoined, and the life he was building with the woman who had always held his heart.